Do you all feel that there is an affinity with what we define as leadership and this concept of accountability, which we have unpacked ever since, Tom, you and I spoke about that more than a decade ago, as being pretty relevant to some of this stuff? Who is ultimately accountable for outcomes? Not same as power, not the same maybe as authority.
Can you define it?
It's if you're designated as the leader of the physics lab or of the business unit or of the design studio, you recognize and the others recognize in you that your job is to ensure the outcomes are meeting the goals. So you're accountable for the outcome, even if you're not doing the work. You're also not merely contributing towards the outcome. There's something different about the role that you're defined as holding versus other people. You could argue that everybody's accountable, but I think once you start to do that in a practical sense, then it's hard to know.
In terms of the landscape, whether it's the project team or it's the company, there's someone who's accountable and taking accountability for the results that are being created.
Are accountable and responsible synonymous?
Yeah,
this is an interesting
English,
one.
They are perhaps, but I think in an organizational setting, there can be a distinction. We do give those a distinction.
In the example of RACI, the accountable person is the one who actually is accountable for the results and has ultimately the decision to make whether we're on track or not on track or to do this or do that. The responsible person usually owns a piece of the action and is responsible for making sure it's getting done. So there's lots of responsible people. There may be one or a few accountable people.
but I think at the same time, because we're creating more autonomy in the organization, we're pushing certain decisions further to the organization, there has to be more accountability. So I fully agree that this is more important now in a very traditional organization where everything's defined by job descriptions. Accountability is less of an issue because also you know exactly what you have to do and your job description tells you whether you're succeeding or not. But the moment you're actually increasing degrees of freedom, there is much more accountability, and it's important to, I think, comes with having more leadership taking place.
So accountability is very results driven. Do I hear that correctly? It's not only formal, where we would say this leader is accountable to, but now if we are going to a self-organized organization, it has something to do with being accountable for certain results coming out. Because responsibility for me is a little bit more process and also kind of relationship oriented. I'm responsible towards other humans I'm working with together and how we're becoming by working together with. Is that a difference we could tease out or not?
Who is the leader accountable to?
Context specific, right? The stakeholders, shareholders, the customer.
And that's different from, as Antoinette asked, responsible.
I think you have to decide what you think those words mean around organization. Let me put it in a different context. The one that I know best is that you have a creative director, or you have an artistic director or an art director in a creative collaboration. That choreographer, artistic director of a ballet isn't doing the dance. They may not even be doing the choreography, but they're the one who ultimately decides and is accountable for the quality of the performance of all of those people working together. So they're accountable to the board of the ballet company and the audience paying tickets.
In other words, as you said, context specific.
We've had a couple great subjects that have come up, and this is another one because this idea of accountability and responsibility, a couple of people mentioned the RASCI model, which is familiar to the engineers and the business people, but it's been around as a distinction for 50 years since I was a young pup in doing systems work. And yet it's still not clear in most conversations. I run into this in my coaching work all the time with people in organizations, is that they're struggling as to where accountability and responsibility is, and they struggle with decision-making all the time. And it's such a fundamental set of concepts and dynamics that we still haven't managed in 50 years to help make clear.